MurdermanTX from
Oh,
Texas.
Murderman.
What is up?
What's going on, Murderman?
Not so much. I wanted to talk about something y'all talked about early on in the show. So earlier in the show, y'all both talked about questioning why people feel the need to convert or deconvert others to their beliefs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I actually do this. And so I wanted to offer like my personal explanation for why I do and see if you guys have problems with it. You can poke and prod it, whatever. For me, there's like a psychological value appeal that's happening personally that causes me to do that. So like after thousands of hours of like personal reflection of my own behavior throughout my entire life, I've come up with what my core values are. And unwillingly, I came from an ultimate core starting value of truth when I was younger. And I originally used this value to label others as either logical or illogical. And I would use truth to deny all subjective value and fell into a spiral of nihilism. But as I grew older and reflected upon my actions and beliefs, I realized that I was actually a hypocrite the entire time, because what was actually happening is I was deeply in love with truth itself. So this realization caused me to embrace what was my auxiliary core value of love. And once that love was brought in, empathy formed, and I began the work of developing my own personal morality. This really helped me escape nihilism as an atheist. The reason I bring up this highly paraphrased story is that all of my actions and communications with others are ultimately traced back to these core values. When I try to speak to others, my attempts to uproot their beliefs or express my own beliefs are expressions of love for my love for truth that I'm trying to give to others by either telling them that they're wrong because of X reason, or telling them that they're right, and this is why I agree with them, whatever it may be, that's why. And this is okay, in my opinion, because I love being proven wrong by other people. I absolutely love it. I long for it. Destroy me. And then I will adjust my truth to be closer to what I believe reality is.
I think that there's a subtle difference between what I'm against and what you're talking about. So I think that I also think there's a difference between if somebody expresses that they're of one faith or another, and then the response to that is, well, I need to turn you into an atheist, like immediately. That kind of thing tends to be what I'm more against. What you're talking about seems to be just the approach of having difficult conversations with people who want to have difficult conversations. And that's totally fine. I think that that's something that we should be doing more of. The idea that politics and religion is a conversation, or conversations that we shouldn't have, is something that I've never understood. Like people tried to ingrain that in me when I was younger, so I would keep bringing this shit up, and it never stuck. I was just like, why? It's important. Yeah. We should have these conversations.
Yeah, it's interesting because like we have this idea that we should have a right to respect people to not engage in difficult conversations, right? Respect the right to not engage, maybe. And that's kind of been changing a lot, especially in recent years, as we've been having kind of more and more difficult conversations about all kinds of stuff. I mean, there's a giant list of things, but on
this show,
even, right? But like as the growth of the internet, as the growth of communication technology, we have more time to talk about things more, and we explore more things, and so those topics keep coming up. And so I guess where I'm going with this is, I would agree with Ocean in the sense that we might be talking about different things, because I think most people want to believe, well, actually, I might not know if most people want to believe in true things. I think people believe they already have an idea of what's true already, and that's why, they think that everybody should think like them. But, everybody might not approach it in the same way. Like, your desire to be proven wrong, your desire to know what's true is unfortunately, not as common as what we would like it to be. And even then, it could still be misguided. I know that, my desire for truth is probably misguided in some ways that I can't even, comprehend because I'm not even there. And so when we start to think of ourselves as, I have to know, because like then you kind of create this self-fulfilling I want to know when I'm wrong, so I must be right, you know what I mean, because I haven't been proven wrong about this thing yet, that can kind of develop into a habit too, and maybe that kind of fuels into what Ocean's talking about, but I don't know.
No, I agree with a lot of what you're saying.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Try to knowledge in general from a framework of epistemic humility. Because if you think about, this is the way I've had memory, like in the brain level, explained to me, and how it works is that when the first time you remember something, you remember the actual thing or the event. But each subsequent time that you recall that memory, you're actually remembering yourself remembering. And that comes with a lot of baggage. And in each time you're doing that, you can even create a delusion.
Yes.
So for me, what I'm doing is I want to approach, because I know that, and that's the way it works, I want to try and approach things with humility. And I try not, at the end of the day, I know that ultimately my perspective, no matter how many checks and balances I put on it, is going to be biased. So I need to be ready to get rid of it.
Yeah.
If there's evidence against it.
There's a story I want to talk about this thing I read one time about a study that was done, and I believe this was the parameters. The idea was people were being asked about their memories of going to Disney World, but how they set it up was they were doing it in a room with a bunch of Disney advertisements and Disney things, but they also included Looney Tunes characters in there, like Bugs Bunny, like a Bugs Bunny stand-in or something, like at Disney World and stuff, right? So obviously there's no Looney Tunes characters at Disney World, but they kind of created this environment where that was the case. And when they were asking questions about what do you remember about Disney World, they were asked do you remember seeing Bugs Bunny at Disney World or something, and something like 10% of the people who were answering said yes, they do remember seeing Bugs Bunny at Disney World. But there's just no way that could be true because that's not a property owned by Disney. And so you can actually create kind of these false memories just by the environments that you're trying to remember stuff in.
Some of those people might be saying that they remember it when they don't. The people are afraid of being wrong.
Yeah.
It's something that I've discovered, especially in this scene when you have debates with people, is that people are really, really afraid of, even if they're obviously losing a debate, they'll stand strong because they don't want to be slighted.
Yeah.
They don't want to feel like they've lost. They don't want to let people know that they realize that there is a loss. For some reason, that adds to it. When honestly, for me, and I think that Murderman feels very much the same way, I'm more interested in conversations like this of being no, I actually don't know the answer to that question. Can you help me out? Or do you have information? Does the person that I'm talking to know more than me on this certain subject? Can you provide me with your resources and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Because debate culture can be toxic. It can be kind of
yeah.
right? It's not an environment that's conducive for learning. It's an environment that's conducive for blood sports. It's entertainment.
Debate is gladiatorial.
Yeah,
absolutely is.
And I don't I'm not interested in that. I'm really not. I think I was at a
time. I am, but it's I've got a thing on it because I think in a debate, it's a really awesome kind of chess game, and there's a gladiatorial aspect of it, and there are positives to that. There are things to be learned from that when it comes to having difficult conversations, because the conversation tactics that are used in a debate are useful to know if you're going to be learning things as well, and if you're going to be convincing people. But at the same time, there is an element of it that becomes a competition that isn't for the two people speaking to learn truth, and on top of that can provide an illusion of legitimacy to people that are actually debating. When you have somebody that's holding a batshit position that is debating somebody, say the anti-vax position. Let's take something that you and I think is just fucking obvious.
Yeah.
If you have two people that are debating the vaccination conversation, you have to set up an environment in which the person who is pro-vaccination is on equal time and equal playing field with the person who is against vaccination.
Yeah.
And there are consequences to that. There just are.
Yeah.
As much as the result of that should be the person who is right winning, the thing is the person who is wrong might have better tactics.
Yeah.
Straight up.
That's true.
Or the person who's right might not even be aware of the data points that support their position and are just bad at arguing. I've seen that happen a number of times.
Yeah.
Where if you have somebody who's like defending evolution versus a creationist, sometimes the creationist is just the better debater, and the person defending evolution just doesn't understand evolution very well and thinks that debating creationists is easy. It's not.
Yeah. Or they're trying to take apart claims that they're not even making, you know, because
right, exactly.
You know,
it's like when your tactics are bad.
Yeah.
You know.
For sure. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to kind of end on, because I know you guys are probably short on time, is that while questioning the reason why people feel the need to convert and deconvert others, I think it's really important to understand that there's like a valid, actual reason to do that questioning that is a more global human explanation for people's behavior that can span across all beliefs, faiths, cultures, and traditions. And that, so like, you don't necessarily need to dismiss someone outright just for trying to deconvert someone else. And that you, through questioning and dialogue, you can expose what people's core values are, so you can understand what they're trying to do when they engage in the discussion.
Yeah, and that's a separate thing to consider too. Like, when is it, what is the line where we need to have that conversation? I got a coworker who believes that crystals have energy, you know? I mean, that doesn't affect my life in any way. I don't think she's buying any crystals or really spending any money on it. It's just something she believes. Is it worth talking about? Is it worth deconstructing?
It becomes worth talking about it when they're saying that they want to cure something with it.
Sure.
Like, this is something that, like, I've gotten into a couple of situations in the pagan community with my opinions on people that talk about healing crystals, because every once in a while, among pagans, you have people that believe this shit. And I have an issue.
I'm sorry, when you said pagans and believe this shit, I thought you were talking about your own shit, like you were just making a meta joke there. But
I'm talking about pagans that believe that they're going to pick up a piece of amethyst and cure their own cancer.
Sure.
Or some shit.
Yeah.
That's the part. That's the kind of thing is when you're taking a position that is in direct opposition to empirical evidence. That's where I'm going to start getting annoyed with you, and especially when you start trying to spread it around. And say, hey, you know what? A friend of mine who is undergoing chemo, you know how shitty chemo is? Just sleep with this amethyst rock under your pillow and stop doing the chemo. And then the person who's looking for fucking hope in that situation decides to accept that.
Yeah.
That's where I'm like, you're pissing me off.
Yeah.
That's a line.
We don't want to have bad beliefs because they can cause harm, and like different beliefs have different potentials for harm as well. Like if your example is like people are actively experimenting and trying to solve real problems that they have. My coworker, for example, I don't think has any problems that she's trying to solve with this particular belief. This belief isn't
not that she's telling you about.
Not that she's telling me about.
I want to ask.
Might want to.
The thing with a lot of the people that start having that kind of rhetoric, it's because they believe that it works for whatever reason, and they'll give you the reason. And sometimes they're open to evidence that are contrary to it. Sometimes they're not. Yeah. And this is where, as we were talking about earlier with the anti-vax conversation, a lot of it applies to this. Yeah. That sometimes there's certain debate tactics that you can use in order to convince people of things, but it involves somebody being open to learning at the same time.
Yeah, it's true. Anti-vax, that's one of those things where I don't give two shits about your feelings. Like, that's a conversation we gotta have because that's super harmful. Energy crystals. Yeah, I think that has a large potential. I probably haven't seen as many examples where that's happening. I don't know anybody that's actively tried to use it, but it's been more passive from my perspective. But
being a polytheist, I run into this stuff sometimes. Right, so it's like
I've ran into the healing crystal things myself.
Yeah, that's the thing is that it's not. I talk about it like it's just a polytheist thing. I've seen most people that I've seen advocate for the crystal thing are atheist. they're not pagans, they're atheists, and but
New
they
Age.
hold to this kind of stuff. Or New Age. I mean, a lot of New Agers are also atheists. You know, they lack a belief in God or something like that, or they deny the existence of God or whatever it is that we want to define it as.
Sure.
But a lot of them, you know, it's not a God belief that they're having. It's not informed by a God belief necessarily.
No.
But it's still a strange position that is in opposition to easily demonstrated empirical evidence that you can just lay out in front of people and say, hey, look, it doesn't work. There isn't even a correlation.
Yeah. Well, Murder Man. Go ahead and give last final thoughts here as we wrap it up.
The reason I actually posit that the reason that's happening is because remember how I said that like all of my actions and communications are ultimately tracing back to like a psychological core value. Well, a lot of these people, like if they value something different than truth, right, as their ultimate value, like let's say something like safety and comfort, for example, if that's
or hope or something,
or some other value, then like that's gonna like literally change the entire way you engage with everything.
Yeah.
So like they may not even acknowledge that what they're doing is dishonest because they're seeking out that safety and comfort or hope or whatever it is, and they're getting it from the thing they want. So that's why they're propagating the idea.
Yep.
Not because they want to hurt people. They are trying to express their own, what they think their own meaning, subjective value that they use to view the entire world through to others.
100% agree with you there. 100%. Psychological safety is a reason why people keep their beliefs. And that's something you have to recognize and acknowledge if you're even thinking about changing somebody's mind about something, because that's going to have repercussions.
I to speak a little bit with experience on that. There was was dating a Christian girl a little while, and her grandmother decided it came out that I was not a Christian. And her grandmother decided to sit me down, and she wanted to have the come to Jesus conversation. And I had to make a choice in that instance of what kind of arguments I wanted to employ, because I was more interested. I decided at that point in time that I was more interested in using a deflection strategy of like, thanks for this information, I'll think about it, so on and such as, because if you use counter arguments and you take faith away from somebody who is 70 plus, that can be a really, really bad situation for that person.
Yep. Well, that was a really great topic to bring up, Murder Man, and we went a couple different directions there, but all of them super relevant and all of them super interesting. Thanks again for calling, and I hope you call again.